Hi everyone, welcome back. This is just a quick video for Tadeus. In your comment in the last video, I just thought it'd be easier to answer with a video rather than text because it's not as straightforward as it might sound in your questions. So you say you're referring to the words elect and remnant and the meanings of them and stuff. So basically, when you look at the lexicon for elect, there's 2 Hebrew and 3 Greek versions, pretty straightforward. They all mean elect or chosen, other than one of them kind of has a bit more meaning to it. But when you go into some of the primary ones it's got listed here, you can see from Isaiah from the Old Testament, 972, 972, 972. So they're all the same particular meaning, which is chosen, elect, chose. And the chosen being, so the first chosen was the Father choosing the Son, that is Christ. And then Christ, being the creator of the world, has chosen his people. So although the elect is Christ, we are Christ's elect. So when you go down into the New Testament stuff, then you've got the Greek versions, G15, 88, G15, 88, G15, 88, G15, 88. And that one was just elect or chosen, pretty straightforward. So when you look at remnant, the other word, there's 9 Hebrew and 3 Greek. And for the most part, they just mean remnant or residue, rest, other. But there are a couple of versions that have a bit more description to them. But often say that's the Old Testament now. Yeah. 3499 tends to be the typically used remnant word. 310, 7611. So yeah, there's quite a few different meanings for that. There was a H910 a minute ago. I can't see that here. That's strange. So yeah, so that's kind of the 2 words, and the meanings and who each is referring to is a little more complicated. So I've done a basic table just so it kind of is easier to understand. So here's who. We've got the elect and the remnant, and then with the things I've been speaking about recently with regards to the 3 different groups, the bride, the church and the Jews, you've got the elect of each group and the remnant of each group. So the elect of the bride is to escape, and that's supposedly due in the next month, anytime within the next month. And the remnant of the bride will be those in scripture remain behind and put their necks on the line. Some of them will be put into jail and tested by Satan. But stay steadfast until death, and you'll give a crown of life. Those that put their necks on the line and have their necks on the line and have their head chopped off are from the bride for the church. Then the church group that will carry on the works at some point, i.e. 2029, the church will be raptured, and there'll be some of the church that are left behind as the remnant, and they'll do what the remnant of the bride did for the church, but they'll do it for the Jews, and they'll die for the Jews. And then with regards to the elect of the Jews, they're going to survive God's wrath. He's going to round them up and put them on his mountain while the rest of the world go through destruction. And the remnant of those, which is likely all of those that survive that, will witness the second coming of Christ and be with him when he arrives. So yeah, ultimately, I've said the below bits before already. Christ is the elect of the Father, and we are all the elect of Christ. And the remnant of each group stay on to help the next group until, obviously, the final group that actually are with Christ. So they wouldn't need to die for another group, but they would be living with Christ. So, that being said, there's 3 different groups. So when you look at, say, for example, the elect in Matthew, so when it's talking about the elect here, although it's still G15 and in Mark, it's still the same number as well, 1588, as it is Matthew, 1588. They're talking about the 2 different elect groups I just mentioned. So Matthew being a message for the Jews, the elect it's talking about here are the elect of the Jews, the final elect group I just mentioned. And the elect of Mark, which is a message to the church, would be the elect of the church. So taking that into example, when it says here, this is a deception that would deceive the very elect of the Jews. Whereas down here, this is 7 years earlier, closer to now, for false Christs and prophets shall arise and shall show signs and wonders to seduce, even if it were possible, the elect. So this is the church elect from Mark. And when you go down to Luke, this is the bride elect. And shall not God avenge his own elect, which cry to him day and night? And then obviously all different scriptures are pertaining to different messages to either different groups of people of the 3 or more, whether there be certain characters in a grand storyline, but also these messages all fit into this table here. So you could say, if you see the word elect in chapter 7 of John, he's referring to Luke, elect, the bride elect, or any of the chapters that you see in this top 7 section would all be elect and remnant regarding those elect and remnant. And then anytime you see elect and remnant in Mark or any of these chapters of these books, or obviously the other chapters and other books that come along as well that haven't quite yet been added, they would all be referring to the elect and remnant of that group. And same again with Matthew. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It weren't very straightforward to write in a text. I thought it'd just be easier to put it down. And yeah, on here I just noticed it's actually on Mark where it says, and except that the Lord had shortened these days, no flesh should be saved, but for the elect's sake, in whom he hath chosen, he hath shortened the days. So this is a shortening of the days for the church. But then that is also the great rapture, where most people that are raptured are taken to heaven go. It's not in the next month, and it's not when Christ returns. It will be the church rapture time. And another thing I want to mention as well is when I say bride, church and Jews, I'm not saying that all the church are in the middle group and all the Jews are in the last group and all the bride are in the first group. So, for example, there are many Jews out there that do confess Christ, so they won't be in the Jew group. They'll be in either the bride or the church group, depending on their works and faith. And same with all the others as well. So I hope that kind of helps answer that question. So what else have you put? Just referring to elect and remnant. See how many times across all versions. Also need to check on concordance. Yeah, different places that are pointed out in some of the words. That'll take a while to go through all the different scriptures with these words. And you also, on the next part of your message, you talk about wanting to see a timeline of the translations up until now. So I found this webpage quickly, and it's only got 100 or so, but it's not even all of them. It's just apparently the major ones. It goes on from the 10th century. It's strange how there's a lot of speak and talk of Christ coming over here when he was alive. I've been listening, about a year ago I was hearing someone talk about apparently Wales, the country Wales next to England, is the place that Christ lived in the days of Christ, and that you can find all the lands and all the descriptions of places in Wales apparently. But anyway, if any of that was the case, why did it take 1,000 years before the first bit of scripture entered this bit of land? You know, this goes back to either there's 1,000 years added to the timeline, or something else has gone on. But anyway, getting back to this. So you can see from here, from about 1000 AD, started getting Saxon Gospels, which only had the Gospels. And then 100 years later, you've got the first 6 books from Genesis to Joshua. And then you got another attempt, that was the Hettuch, and then you got the Psalter, that only had the Psalms. And then it weren't until around the 1400s you got another version there, which is the first translation of the entire Bible, was in 1300s or the 14th century. And then 100 years later you've got Tyndale's Testament, and from there in the 1500s, 4 years later you got another version, a year later another version, 4 years later another version, 3 years later another version, 2 years later another version, 21 years later the Geneva Bible, then 8 years after that, and then 40 years after that you've got the King James. So you can see here that there was lots of different versions coming out, and the king wanted his own copyright version that he could print and distribute and charge potentially. I don't know if it was always free or if they used to charge, I'm not sure. But then from there it was a couple of 100 years before any new versions come along, and this doesn't really show that many new versions. There's, you know, I think there's at least one new version coming out every year now, but this shows about 100 in total, I think. So there's a long list. I personally, I mean, everyone's got their own preference or choice, but I personally would stick to the older books because there's less chance, and the ones closer to the original, so Hebrew or Aramaic, because it's less times it's been translated as it goes through different languages, and on the same note it's closer to the original, so there'll be less diversion from the meanings of the words, because even now there's words that I used as a kid that don't have the same meaning now, because people just change the meaning of words over time and use them for different things, slang even. So there's that. And there was another thing you asked as well. Have you ever noticed the word planets in 2 Kings 23:5? People think it's a big deal. I'm not sure. Used back then. Yeah, so with regards to planets, it does say that, yeah. In my research, so before Christ woke me up and called me, I used to look into things like conspiracy theories, spiritual things, creations of the world, Book of Enki, Book of Thoth, all that kind of stuff that is the so-called mystery knowledge of the other side of things, the dark side of things, you know, of the world rather than of heaven. And I found that even the translations of tablets that are thousands of years old, such as Thoth and Enki, they're talking about planets and solar systems. So this has been a long-going battle between the truth and deception. When people are aware that the Earth is a plane, we're in a society of truth predominantly. And when people are in a society of a globe and a solar system, they're in a society of deception. And from my understanding, seeing how it flips through time, is it's like 2 sides of a coin. They'll start the age will start with truth. God will judge, say, the world or the people. Then the remnant, the remains, are good people. Majority of them people are good, and they'll start with truth and goodness. And then over time, the deception and the wicked ones crawl and scrape and scratch their way through to the top and flip everything around back to the globe. And God created this world knowing everything that was going to happen, knowing that the deceivers would try to deceive. So he gave them the way everything appears to be and can be seen in two different ways. He done that on purpose to give them their opportunity to at least try and convince the world in their deceptions to become their slaves or whatever. So when it says here, and he put down the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah, in the places round about Jerusalem. Them also that he burned incense unto Baal, and to the sun, the moon, and planets, and to all the host of heaven. So this here is talking about a period of time where they believed in what the world believes in now, the globe and the solar system, and the Baal being the bull system. And so, yeah, it's quite possible planets was actually used then, or it could have been a translation up to now. I suppose the only way to find out was to get the original version, which I don't have, nor can I read Hebrew. But yeah, what I found is we go through starting from a resale, from a wipeout or whatever, with the truth, and then over time, the things that are consciously known as the truth to people, those that want to divert and deceive the world, basically cause people to think the opposite of those very conscious thoughts that they know as truth. So yeah, that's my understanding of it anyway. I hope that kind of helps, and yeah, if you've got any more questions, just let me know. Take care and God bless.